Wind howled through the Rocky Mountain pines like a warning, sharp and unforgiving, when Elijah Turner stepped out of his cabin that morning. He was used to silence up here, used to loneliness so deep it felt stitched into his bones, but nothing could have prepared him for what he saw hanging from the wooden beam above his front porch. A woman, barely conscious, her blonde hair tangled and stiff with blood. And carved, burned brutally into the wood beside her were words that made his heart slam against his ribs. Apache lover. For a long moment, Elijah couldn't move. Memories he had buried for years clawed their way back to the surface. Old accusations, old hatred, old violence. He had come to the mountains to escape the world, to live quietly with his Bible, his tools, and his regrets. But the world, it seemed, had finally found him again. Elijah was a man carved by loss. In his early 40s, his beard was streaked with gray, his shoulders bent from years of manual labor and emotional weight. He had once been a pastor's son in a small Colorado town, raised on scripture and Sunday hymns. But life had taken everything from him: his parents in a drunk driving accident, his fiancée Rebecca in a fire that authorities later called suspicious. Whispers followed him after that. He left before they turned into accusations, choosing isolation over judgment. Now, staring at the broken woman swaying slightly in the wind, Elijah felt the same old fear tighten around his chest. Someone wanted to send a message, and they had chosen him as the delivery point. He rushed forward, cutting the rope with his hunting knife and catching her weight just in time. She was lighter than she looked, her body shaking violently from shock and cold. As he carried her inside, he noticed the bruises on her wrists, the burns along her arms, and the faint scars of restraint. Whoever had done this wanted her to suffer. Elijah laid her on his bed and wrapped her in blankets, his hands trembling despite years of living off the land. He checked her pulse, weak but steady, and whispered a prayer he hadn't spoken aloud in years. "Lord, I don't know why you brought this to my door," he said softly, "but please don't let her die." Hours passed. He cleaned her wounds as gently as he could, using what little medical supplies he had. As the fire crackled beside them, the woman stirred and finally opened her eyes. They were a startling blue, filled instantly with fear when they focused on him. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracked and hoarse, "don't let them come back." "My name is Elijah," he said quickly, stepping back so he wouldn't frighten her. "You're safe. No one knows you're here." She studied him for a long moment, then tears streamed down her face. "I'm Sarah," she said. "They said you finish what they started." Elijah felt a sharp pain in his chest. "Who told you that?" She swallowed hard. "Men from the town below. They said you were dangerous, that you hated people like me." Elijah shook his head slowly. "They lied." Over the next few days, Sarah's strength slowly returned, and with it her story. She had been a schoolteacher passing through the region to start a new job at a reservation-adjacent town. Her kindness had been mistaken for something else. A group of men, fueled by prejudice and old grudges, accused her of being romantically involved with an Apache man she had helped at a shelter. When she refused to deny it, because there was nothing to deny, they decided to make an example of her. "They burned those words so no one would help me," she said one night, staring into the fire. "So people would assume I deserved it." Elijah clenched his fists. He knew that kind of hatred. He had lived under it for years. As Sarah healed, a fragile bond formed between them. They shared meals in silence at first, then slowly with conversation. Elijah told her about Rebecca, about the fire, about how the town had turned on him without proof. Sarah listened without judgment, her presence slowly easing the loneliness he had carried for so long. But danger was never far. One evening, Elijah noticed unfamiliar footprints near the tree line. The men were searching. Fear returned, not for himself but for Sarah. "They won't stop," she said quietly when he told her. "You don't owe me anything, I can leave." Elijah looked at her, really looked at her, and realized something had changed inside him. "I won't let them hurt you again," he said firmly. "Not here, not anywhere." That night the men came, Armed, drunk, angry, they surrounded the cabin, shouting slurs and threats, accusing Elijah of hiding the traitor. Elijah stood in the doorway, rifle in hand but finger off the trigger, his heart pounding as scripture echoed in his mind. "Blessed are the peacemakers." "You don't want to do this," he shouted. "Leave now." Instead, one of them raised a torch. Everything happened fast. The crack of a warning shot into the air. The sudden appearance of headlights on the dirt road. Law enforcement, called earlier by Sarah using Elijah's old emergency radio. The men scattered but not before being identified. Arrests followed. Charges were filed. The truth came out. Sarah testified weeks later, her voice shaking but strong. Elijah attended quietly, sitting in the back of the courtroom. For the first time in years, he watched justice unfold, not perfectly but honestly. When it was over, Sarah stood outside the courthouse, sunlight warming her face. Elijah joined her. "I don't know what comes next," she said. Elijah nodded. "Neither do I." She smiled softly. "But I know this, I wouldn't be alive without you." He shook his head. "God brought you to my door." Months later, Elijah returned to his cabin, but not alone. Sarah chose to stay nearby, teaching again, rebuilding her life. The burned words on the porch beam were carved out and replaced with a simple cross. Loneliness didn't vanish overnight. Healing never does. But in that quiet mountain place, two broken lives found restoration, not through revenge or hatred, but through courage, compassion, and faith. And Elijah Turner finally understood something he had forgotten long ago. Sometimes God doesn't remove the pain. Sometimes he sends someone through it, right to